right, Gianni. Well, thank you for joining us for 1.73. I'd like to get started by just having you tell us more about you, how where you are now, what you do, and how you got there.
Where I am now, currently, I work for a company called Alta Equipment. We are in multiple states, 14 plus states. Construction equipment is the kind of the I don't want to say division, but this kind of the business that I oversee in North America. This business started as a material handling company in 1984 and brought on the construction side of it back in 2000. 10-ish, 11-ish in that area. And then I came in here in 2013. But so again, I oversee construction for North America. And when I came in 2012, 13, we did about 25 million in construction, and we did over $1 billion last year. So it's been significant growth with a lot of challenges. There's no doubt along the way, and there's challenges every day. So for sure, but it's been a pretty wild ride, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What
And
was the when you first got in there? Um, what were some of the challenges that you started hitting right away?
well, I've been in here a couple different, you know, I guess areas of expertise. I first came on as a salesman, right? So that's the role I had, and then and now I've been in my current role for really about 4 years now. So different. It was sales versus kind of managerial. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the struggles, early on from a sales position was taking, everyone knows Caterpillar, right? They're the 800-pound gorilla, and we're mostly we sell multiple OEMs. We represent multiple OEMs, but Volvo's kind of our flagship here. It was in Michigan, and it is in North America. We represent again all other OEMs, but it was really leveraging my lifelong relationships. I grew up in the construction industry, and helping to leverage those to I guess give them um, faith, I guess, that not only myself but this organization would take good care of them. So that was a struggle, right? It was again they were at 2%, 3% market share, and then we hit double digits and over 20%. But that was just done by hard work and really just kind of doing what you say you're going to do, right? It's pretty simple, I think, for most people, but I tend to simplify things, but ultimately it's a lot more complex than that for sure. But it was a struggle to get people on board to kind of try it. Just like anything, hey, my dad's a Ford guy, my grandpa's a Ford guy, I drive a Ford or a Chevy. It's breaking that, right? People aren't comfortable, and it's an expensive piece of machinery. So for them to give it a shot, they got to really have faith that not only is it a good product, but when it does go south, who's going to be there to take care of them? And that's kind of what we've done little by little. Yeah. Anyway.
What Gianni, you said you family. I mean, like so the construction industry is not unfamiliar
No,
for
no, I
you.
grew up in it. I grew up in it. So yeah, for me, my personal background before I came to Alta, it was growing up in a construction family. My father um, and uncles were in business together, concrete paving and excavating. So I grew up around it literally as a little kid on a bulldozer and a job site when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. So it really was in my blood. And that's kind of where I guess my love of equipment and that's kind of where I ended up going. Right, I worked for them growing up, doing every job you can imagine. Right, laboring, truck driving, some mechanical work, everything. And then I left them when I was 19, 20, and started a small concrete company on my fly work on my own with a partner, and just kind of went on my own and just kind of ended up. That's how I ended up. And again, along the way in the construction world or in this industry, I think the best part of it is the relationships that you build along the way. And you just meet some really great people, whether it was developers or subcontractors or people that did what you did, and kind of, I would say, just found my way and had a few successful businesses, and then wound some of them down, and then I ended up here on a different on a different level. And I think what helped me is coming into the dealership world was a sense of urgency and knowing what a customer wants and expects from a dealership partner, whether it was, again, financing or maintenance or value, whatever it may be. I think I certainly understood what their concerns and their issues were, and just trying to bring that, into the dealership model, just to get a unique perspective, having a customer's perspective.
Yeah.
So just trying to be a value add there instead of kind of a, I don't know if it's a right way to say on a podcast, but like kind of a douchey salesman. People don't like that salesman that's just calling, and some people got a cold call ultimately, but it's just being a value add. You're talking the talk, walking the walk. You kind of been there, done it. So it certainly helped. It helped me that way to kind of connect with the customers on multiple levels.
So I'm curious, like what had you, so at 19 years old, you're working with your dad and your uncle in
Yeah.
a concrete and excavation business.
Yeah.
What was it at 19? What was it? And not the age is less relevant, that I'm just curious, like what was the trigger that had you say, you know what, I'm going to go do this on my own versus stay with your dad and your uncle or go to work for somebody else down the street?
You know what? Yeah, great question. I think I was 16 years old when I would work in the summers, younger than that, but ultimately every summer break I would work. And then, you get to know the crew, and one of their concrete foremen at the time, he was younger. I mean, he was probably 24, but I was 16, and we kind of hit it off. He was a hard worker, taught me a lot, as well as my father and my uncles. But we started doing some side jobs here and there, right on the weekends. You do a patio or a driveway, and then you do a few of those, and you're like, hey, let's make a run. Let's try this on our own. So that was kind of the impetus for us, kind of for me. And then at the time, I was 18, 19 years old, and for a guy, I guess at his age, was probably 26 to 28. So. He trusted a young guy, whatever he saw in me, and vice versa. We just kind of gave it a go. And that's how it really started. It was just, I think a different vision from maybe what my uncle, I think just, hey, there was my dad and two uncles in business. I don't know what room there was for me there, right? You know what I mean? You can only split the pie so many ways, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of how it started, if you will. And then we were in business for a few years, and then he and I split up and went our separate ways. And that's kind of how I got into it on my own, I guess.
What, if we ask anything you don't want to answer, just simply don't answer it.
Right.
What was it? I'm presuming, there was some misalignment. Like, what was it between you and your business partner that had you say, maybe this isn't the right marriage for us?
It's just different philosophies, number one. And I guess for me, it was concrete is not that all construction is pretty physical, right? And I liked being around equipment. My dad was an awesome operator, right? I mean, he was, an artist with equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
He taught us how to run the equipment, and he did it with pride. So that was kind of the love for me. I enjoyed concrete, but at the same time, 100-degree weather on your hands and knees every day, it was something I didn't see it being sustainable. Certainly something that I didn't want to do when I was 65 years old or even beyond. So it was like, how do I kind of, lean into it? And I was in the construction. I was on the equipment side of our business. I would prep it, and then, the guys would follow up and pour, and I would follow up with them and help them as well. But ultimately, that was kind of my love and the appreciation for equipment. And that's kind of how I guess I pivoted after a few years and wanted to kind of focus in on that, and then figured if I had to be working 12 to 14 hours a day, I'd rather be on a piece of equipment and limit some of the physical activity. There certainly was still physical activity there, here and there, but that was probably what moved me into, I guess, more of what I love to do.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a point in which, you're going through these different, I guess, stages or parts of this overall excavation construction business? Was there ever a point where you're like, I don't want anything to do with this? Or were you always searching for, like what you talked about, your love within that industry. Like you knew like this is where I want to be, but it's just finding that niche, that itch that you can scratch.
Yeah. So for me, it was it just changed. I think it just you evolve. I mean, I guess we all hope that we evolve as a human being and as a person, right? School was not, college for me really wasn't in the cards. When I say I went, I took some classes at community colleges and whatnot. It was accounting or some business classes here or there, but ultimately. I enjoyed being out in the field and working in the elements and kind of being able to walk away and see the fruits of your labor, like some sense of accomplishment, if you will. Because in today's, at least in my, I guess we'll get there, but in my job today, you get bogged down with personnel issues, and just and again, at the end of the day, you're wore out. I mean, I'm wore out differently than not physically, but mentally, emotionally. I get home and right at the end of a week from traveling, it's just you are emotionally spent, and it's just a different thing. I so it was there's just a lot of evolution, I guess. For me, I didn't know. I mean, as a young man, I was always more analytical,
Hmm.
and this is years ago, right, Henry? It was like, hey, at the time, I went to school, and I'm an engineer, and I make X, right? And what an engineer makes leaving school today certainly wasn't what it was 30, whatever it was, damn near 40 years ago, right? 30 some years ago. So it was just math to me. It was like, well, you know what? If I didn't want to be a doctor or lawyer. I thought maybe being a dentist. I'm like, if I'm going to put that 8 to 10 years in, I think I can do it here. And then I thought I could get in there, buy a lot, build a house, get into real estate. I was just surrounded by some pretty successful people that didn't go all the way in school, whether it was developers and builders. And I just thought again, I was working with my hands, and I just thought at the end of the day, you saw something you accomplished. So I just went that way. That's where I started. So again, it just changed, but at the same time, you don't know what you want when you're 18 years old, right? You kind of figure it out, and well, I don't want to be on my hands and knees finishing concrete. Then you kind of pivot, you go here, and then you end up where I ended up, and you don't see it. It just kind of happened. But I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question or I confused you, but ultimately,
No, no, you definitely did. I know we both do. I know I specifically resonate with that part of your story because you know, I got the 1.73 gene. Um, so school was not my forte at all. I every time you try to sit me down for homework, it'd be, trying to strap a chupacabra down. It would not I would not do it. Like it was just I don't want to do this. Why am I learning this? Just total agony, to
yeah,
get me to do homework and progress through. But, I got through high school and, college was something that was pretty much the main option, if not the only, for a lot of kids at my school. It was just kind of that was the option that you go down, and like what college you get into um says a certain status about like how what kind of person you are, how you did, et cetera, et cetera. And so I decided like, okay, well everyone's going to college. I got to go to college, right? I have to, otherwise I'm gonna look like a total bum. Like I wasn't concerned about like someone's going to MSU versus U of M, whatever. It's like I just need to get there so I don't look like I have no idea what I'm doing, even though I do. So go to college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do either. You're 18 years old, you work at a fried chicken restaurant for a month over the summer, very little experience with anything. um and I get there and I'm like, okay, what do I want to do, what do I want to do? And that question, even when I found kind of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study, which was film production, I still struggled with you know, figuring out how I can translate that into something that I love. It was still searching for that. Like I may have found the industry, but you know, finding what I can do in that industry was the search for it. And then COVID hit, all these extenuating circumstances. Um, but my point is that I resonate with that a lot. Is the I guess the what would you say, the expectation of of going down a specific path to get a certain outcome, whether it be college or something else. I know college is the big one nowadays, but uh, having that expectation put on you where it's like, okay, you're going to go to community college, and then by the end of it, you better have something to show for it. Versus you're like, well, what do I have to show? It's like every day when I leave the job site, I have something that I can show for it. Like that's tangible, and it's really interesting you bring that up because that tangible meaning that you derived from the work that you were doing over the progression of kind of the status quo. I think that's a really cool story.
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't know, Preston, you're going to say.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious when both of you are sharing. I mean, Gianni, like who have the skeptics been along the way? Not necessarily by name, but like who are the folks that said, "Yeah, I don't know if Gianni's going to be able to make that work."
There's so many, and I think there's no doubt when you're 19 years old and you're leaving and you're going to start your business. There was, a lot of naysayers, and as a young man, and even today, I mean, there's nothing that motivates you more, right, than having a chip on your shoulder and trying to prove somebody wrong. So, there's a lot of mistakes I made. There's no doubt, right? I wish I maybe wouldn't have been as bullheaded and say I'll figure it out on my own. Henry, your dad. I know your dad pretty well. Certainly, probably not as well as you do, but ultimately, as a child, I think there's times where, what do they know, or I'll figure it out. And I just, you'll hear it, right? Everyone older will say, I wish I knew I'd be dangerous if I had my knowledge now at your age. You know what I'm saying? But that's how you evolve, though. That's how you learn. And I didn't quite have the mentors that I probably would have been. Skipped a few heartaches and probably been in better shape, I guess, in many aspects. But you know what? It is what it is. But probably my biggest lesson learned was, I don't want to get personal stuff, but ultimately I was divorced probably 20 some years ago. And there's no doubt that was a huge learning and changing point for me. And it was me growing up in the business, being around a young man, some successful people that maybe you could argue their fathers or uncles or people, I don't want to say they were gifted, but they had I don't want to say an empire, but they had a really nice thing going where they could step in, and I just didn't have that. So I think when I was younger, it was like an honest jealousy, like I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to do this on my own. And that's just how I was wired. In right, wrong, or indifferent, it took some challenges in life and kind of a reset for me to where it was money. You would ask me at 18 what the definition of success was. 28, 38, 48. Now I'm in my mid 50s, Henry. It's like it certainly changes, right? When I was 18 years old, it might have been if I make X amount a year. You know what I mean? If I'm 28, if I have this, or I have this house, or I have a business making X. And it was always, for me, it was surrounded about money and status and whatever it was. And then you kind of grow up, and when you're jealous and you're chasing that, at least when I was chasing it, and like I said, for me with divorce, it really, I had kids, you start talking about the importance of things. And I think that the day I at least learned, not the day or days it took me to learn to just want, instead of being jealous, being happy for someone that's maybe either outworked you or figured it out, instead of being like, well, how did they get there and I didn't? Instead of maybe asking the question, I put the jealousy aside and just maybe started asking questions and just being happy for someone's success instead of jealous. It feels like it was just this shift, you know what I mean, for me. And then, whether things started happening, you can talk about the positive mental, output or aura, whatever you want to call it. It just feels like some things, like nothing's been easy. I'm not saying there's bumps in the road, but ultimately when I think that shift, and I truly, when I talk to someone now and I want the best from, whether it's customers or people that work for me or work for our organization, you ask the question because you genuinely care about them and want them to do well. And I think like you put up that positive kind of, you know, whatever you say, or whatever you want to say, it's just, it feels like it comes back in spades. It just, for me, it was huge when I made that change in my philosophies and mentality, just things kind of changed. And again, like, believe me, there were still other bumps in the road along the way, but ultimately, you're just trying to surround yourself with people that truly want the best for you and vice versa, and that's a huge lesson learned for me that really kind of really helped me get where I am today. Right.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder, Gianni, of in regards, like, how does like a barely make it out of high school kid have any hopes for creating any form of like financial stability, or even like literally put food on the table? And it's interesting because I recall the world I grew up in, it was literally that what you just said. Like, here are the measures. It's the house, it's the car, it's the bank account, which, by the way, if you really dig in, the big house and the really fancy car means the bank account's almost nothing and you're like over your head in debt. Anyway, different podcast, different conversation perhaps, but what was it? What was the softening is not the right word, but like, if there were a few moments you recall where you realize those just are not the right measures, and it's a better measure. A better measure is the gratitude for others, gratitude for what I have. The better measure is asking the question, like, am I the best dad I can be, or the best husband I could be, or
Yeah.
like the best business partner I
Yeah.
could be? What were some of the examples of like where, all right, that's actually a broken yardstick. These are
Yeah.
better ones.
Well, I think it goes back, like I said, I mentioned my divorce, right? My kids were three. I mean, I have four now because I got remarried and a child come into my life when she was 5, and she's now, hell, she's 26 now,
Mm.
right? She's still in school. She's gonna get her doctorate now. But ultimately, it was everything you just said, because you put this pressure on yourself to work. Again, formerly uneducated guy trying to figure it out, but all I knew was I'll always outwork that guy because I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And that's cool when you're 18, 19, but it's hard to sustain that, especially from a physical aspect. So you're putting to climb that mountain, but then you go through some bumps in the road, and the importance of family, right? You got a family that breaks up, and a guy that, for me, that worked literally, you know, I mean, it's crazy hours, right? Crazy hours. 60, 70 hours a week is kind of the norm. And then I grew up that way, but my parents are from the old country, like Italy, and it was the stories that I heard, and that's how you grew up, just work ethic. You put your head down, you go to work, you save your money, and that's what I knew. Um, but
Yeah.
when the things get broken up, and when I was doing that, and my wife at the time was home, her duty in my head, I was doing mine. I go work dark to dark, take care of the family. She takes care of that. That's just all I knew. And then when it gets split up, it's one of the best. Again, you don't want to say divorce. The best thing is, for me, from growing personally and professionally. It was because what it did is it allowed me. I had to leave work a little early, pick up the kids on my days, do that. And again, I think I'm a pretty good dad. There's no doubt, but at the same time, you still figure, like, you can always second guess some of the things you've done, but it forced me to take time and spend with my kids that otherwise I wouldn't, one on one, because my wife, that's her job. She's got it. I'm the provider. She's the nurturer. So I think I did some growing there for sure. I think the relationship with my kids, no doubt, is in a better place today than it ever would have been if that kind of knocking me off course didn't kind of. I'd had to figure it out, right? And
Yeah.
that's one aspect that certainly um, made me kind of take note of what's important in my life. You know what I mean? There's no doubt.
It's maybe a little bit of a tangent here, but what's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
I'm thinking plenty. I mean, I don't know what you're talking. You talking about financially? Are you talking about diving off of a cliff, or what are you talking about?
No, I mean, say like this was here was the situation where, well, I mean, for example, we moved here 20 years ago from Chicago to Detroit. Neither one of us had a job. We had no income. Henry was 3 years old, and Natalie was pregnant with our daughter Georgia. And I mean, is that the biggest risk? Uh, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Starting this business seems now like that was a bigger risk because then we're putting everything on the line, saying, you know, for better or worse, these kids are actually like they're real, and holy crap, they like eat a ton of food, and we got school, we got activities, funding all of that just seemed like, man, what have I got myself into? Like maybe it's just better to take a different path. I don't know. Just if you look back and just say, here's something that if I recall for a moment was like, man, I really kind of put a lot on the line.
You know what? When I said, whatever it was a few minutes back, I said it just changes. My definition of success certainly changes. When you ask what it was, it was always financially, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, as we get older, Preston, there's nothing more important than, all the money in the world, health and time, right? We
Yeah.
can't buy the health and we can't buy the time. So as you get older, that there's no doubt it's there. But I guess for me, it's almost similar because the risk that I took leaving a family business, starting something with that, right? That was my biggest risk then, right? And then separating from my partner, doing something else, another risk, right? It's all, I think, in every aspect, there's no doubt I can say it was. And quite frankly, where I am today, I was at Alta in sales. Was that a risk? I don't know. I thought I'd do pretty good, but then I left for a couple of years, and I um, went to the insurance world with some friends that made a pretty nice offer to me, and I made that decision purely financially because I just understood the math, if you will, and kind of like, hey, you get your customers and you kind of keep them, and it's something you could do non-physical for a long time, right? And you could make a pretty decent life, out there on the golf course doing whatever. But it wasn't it wasn't my passion, and I was good at it though. I brought in some good business and I was good at it, and I would still probably be there. But where I am now, Preston, it was something that came about. Our past president passed away, unfortunately, and the CEO and CFO came to me and asked me to kind of join the team. And even though I helped Alta get to a certain point, you know what I mean, and then I left for a couple of years and asked to come back, which was pretty cool that they thought that much of me to kind of to come back and fill a big void, right? And again, he did it. We all do things differently. There's some certainly some things that he had that I wish I had from a personality standpoint. There's just some things we all do differently. So for me to leave, I was in a pretty successful place as a partner there. To leave, to kind of come back where I am today, there's no doubt that that's a pretty big risk. Number one, it was a hard decision because I was again leaving my partners on one side to join this business. Publicly traded company. Who am I to know to think that I could kind of take on this role? So, but I felt it's probably weird. It's just like almost like I don't want to say a duty, but like I was there in the beginning and I left for a couple of years, and now they needed or asked for help. I just felt like I could help, even though like maybe I don't fit the mold for an executive. I don't have an MBA or a doctorate in business, etc. But so that was a pretty big risk, I think, leaving a successful business, kind of giving that up and taking on significant challenges and challenges that are here every day. I mean, they're compounded. I have them every day, as you know, Preston. So I just think they've evolved. There's been different levels of risk in my last 30 some years, in the business world, but 40 damn near. But yeah, to date, this is a hell of a risk I think I took kind of joining the team, but it's been challenging and fun for sure.
Yeah. That's interesting that, you know, I think this is something important to highlight in both of your guys' examples of taking on a risk. It's risk with more responsibility added to it. It's not like you're jumping off a cliff and not looking what's at the bottom before doing so. You're taking this risk of, okay, I'm gonna take this step forward. I'm going to the unknown, but what that is giving me, I'm now shouldering a lot more responsibility than what I once had, because now more of what needs to get done is on me, or everything that needs to get done is on me. You're not just taking this blind risk with no consequences. There's sometimes a lot of things are everything to lose, and having that sense of responsibility, I think, is what drives your success or meaning. Whatever. I mean, I like the word meaning. I think that's a more apt description for when you take on that responsibility after taking risk, whether it's starting your own business or moving up in a position, whatever it may be. It allows us, I think, to escape the measures that are put upon us, because I think a lot of measures end up actually taking away our ability to take on more responsibility, because someone is just like choosing for us. It's like, okay, you have to go to college. Oh, you have to join the business, whatever it may be, versus taking the risk where, you have some responsibility, or you have all the responsibility in decision making, saying, hey, I'm going to take this risk of my own volition. With that comes the responsibility of whatever happens next. But that choice and the fact that you have all the responsibility, and when you get successful, I think creates so much meaning, I think, for you and for everyone when they decide to take that risk and take on the responsibility associated with it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Henry. It's almost that responsibility is the greatest measure of risk. Meaning, the higher the responsibility, the higher the risk. The thing is, if you set yourself up to play that game and to win, I think it's simple. It's probably really hard, right, Gianni? Like, a relationship doesn't work out, or you get into this new business, and then Ryan and others, they say, hey, we'd like you to come back, and like, you always have to take a look at like what you're leaving behind. And
Right.
we probably all go through like all sorts of assessment or qualification of like, oh man, crap, is this really gonna be worth it? But it's interesting. I've been blessed to have folks like knowing you, Gianni, and others just in our work that, it's the one common theme is like, man, you guys like play a game of responsibility at the highest level. And I think it scares the crap out of most people, which is probably why, so few people are running billion-dollar a year businesses, right? So I've got one more question I'd love to ask, and it's around just kind of the context of advice. So if there's one lesson, and I won't narrow it down that far, but if there's a lesson that your job has taught you that you think everybody should learn at some point, what is it?
Boy, tough question. That what has it taught me that everyone should learn? Um, is it this job, or just is it just the getting here? You know what I mean? Is it the journey? I guess you
The
know.
journey. That's a better way to put it.
Um, for me, as a young guy, at least a business this big, right? Um, Being a young guy starting out, like I said, doing driveway side jobs, it's a couple people, it's two guys, it's five guys, it's 10 guys, or whatever it is, and you could micromanage, you could push people out of the way and go, I'm going to do it myself, because no one could do it bigger, better, and faster than you. But you really limit your growth in so many ways, right? The business can only grow so big because you're control freak. So the learning how to trust and empower others is something that took me a long time to figure out because I could always do it better. I could always do it more efficient. I could always do that. So that's something that I've learned. It's allowed me to grow as a person and in turn kind of grow professionally. And then Preston, you're part of our meetings, and some of the folks that I work with, we work with. It's like they're very good at what they do, and it's been cool to see. Henry, you said kind of like when I said like, hey, when I was a young man, you'd walk away from a job and you could see like, hey, I built that or I did that, and your sense of accomplishment was like something physical. And then like today, it's being a mentor for some of the, whether it's younger, older, my age, to give them kind of the lessons learned. And I said I wish I had a mentor to kind of save me the pain and give me some shortcuts. But when they listen, and they're so smart, smarter than I am in many many ways. But it's just like they're afraid to let go, and you know what I mean. And I said, look, guys or girls, like you want to come along this journey with me or whomever it might be. It's you got to empower your team, allow you. How do they get your job to allow you to make the next step up in the organization? So that's been cool, evolution for me. But again, my reward is seeing it on other folks, right? It's when they get it, it clicks, and you can see them kind of hand it off, build their team, and they kind of ascend in the organization. So that's where I'm excited when I see that personal and professional growth within our organization. That's where I get excited.
Yeah, it's the rather than looking at it as like, what's the opportunity for me to garner the credit? It's I'm willing to take a risk with others,
Yeah,
give them a chance.
yeah, yeah. Because you can't do it on your own. You need the team, man. And as a leader, I think again, I know I'm never the smartest guy in the room. Henry, like the 1.73. I mean, I might have been better than your dad, but not much. But ultimately, you just didn't really apply yourself because it just didn't challenge you. You kind of got by. You were doing other things. But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's 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 cool to see the growth in the team. That's where I get excited, and that's where I feel fulfilled. And again, there's challenges every day. It's not easy. I'm overwhelmed at times leaving here, like, oh my God, what in the hell am I going to do to help fix this? And you got to chip away at it every day. And then you look back. It's a month later, it's a year later, it's 4 years later. We're certainly better today than we were then. We always have issues and things to fix, but when you build a team that's kind of got your back, and I certainly have their back, it's family, and it really is. You're here all the time working with them, and in my leadership team that your dad knows very well. They are family, and I do anything for them, and I know they do the same for me. So that it's unique, it's cool. I don't know if it's unique. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Preston, you probably see it, but for me, it's great. It's my family outside my blood, if you will. But there's nothing I wouldn't do for them, and I want to help them be as successful as they can be personally and professionally, and in turn, if we can all have that mindset, we get there together, right? So again, all these challenges. Hopefully, one day we're toasting, and laughing a little bit about. Oh my God, do you remember what that was like 5 years ago or 4 years ago? Look what we've overcome. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and that we're all kind of striving to get there together. So
Mm-hmm. How much of that familial aspect would you say is a part of your mission? And by mission, I don't mean, in a goal setting sense, something to accomplish, but something like a journey, that you were talking about, something that you're constantly kind of trying to live up to and be your guidepost for. Because you talked about, finding gratitude and how not being the smartest guy in the room is okay, and sometimes having that chip on your shoulder to work the hardest, and then learning to surround yourself with the people that want the best for you, and finding success and meaning in helping them. So how much of that do you think is part of kind of your journey and your mission throughout everything you do?
I think it's 100% of everything at my journey. It's everything I wake up to do, right? And for me, I know I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I've surrounded I guess I've said it, I always say this, my strength is knowing my weaknesses. I got plenty of them, right? And I'm certainly smart enough to surround myself with smarter people that are really good at what they do. But I do know one of my strengths is certainly leading, and I think I can do it because I genuinely want. I think it goes back to what I said earlier, that evolution or that curve in my life that made me truly stop being jealous of people that's successful and wanting the best. I truly want the best for everyone in our organization, our customers to be successful, whomever it may be. And how can I help you get there, right? And you can't fake that. Everyone can read through the BS, right? So for me, that's easy, and it's easy, and it's frustrating because I want every one of our leaders to have that same mindset, because if you do, I think you create a positive culture, and you want to be. At that point, we're a destination. That's where people are going to come to want to work because they're appreciated. Their hard work's not appreciated. They can ascend in the organization. You'll get as much out of it as you put into it. So for me, that's what I want. So when you say that's my driving thing, it's like, again, it's not money. Again, it goes back to what when you change. The money will come. You know what I mean? If you're chasing that, and that's what I did as a young man, and that's where you kind of learn. But if you're passionate about anything in life and you do it to the best of your ability, I think the money kind of follows, and that's what I try to want. I try to instill in not just my leadership team, anyone. Again, how can I help you, help yourself, help the organization be better, be successful? You know.
Well, that probably is a great place for us to just kind of wrap up our conversation. Uh, the money will come. Don't chase that. And not necessarily what you said, Gianni, but what I took from your words today, like chase the future, right?
Yeah.
And bring some really amazing people along with you. And
Yeah.
one thing I've come to know you to be is like just a man who cares deeply about others, is a total champion, even for the folks that probably others may not support as much, because you're just willing to, like, hey, you give it a chance. Like, you probably, and I would imagine at some level, like there's just, some recollection, humility, realization, like, I was probably I was probably in a pickle at one point, and somebody helped out, and
Yeah.
somebody gave me a chance, somebody trusted me, empowered
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
to actually take a step forward. And you've built an amazing team, an amazing organization. And there's one thing I know you to be is just a rock star dad. So when we're walking into our meetings and you're on your iPad or your iPhone with your grandson, and I'm like,
Grandkids.
yeah, it's like it's awesome, right? It's like, it's like
Yeah.
that guy knows what's important. So
You know what? I got amazing kids, and I got two grandsons, and she's the only one, obviously, with kids, but she's an amazing mom. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm in awe of her. So yeah, and I pick up, 99% of the time, I certainly will pick up, and I've been with our board members that I'm not with a lot, and I'll pick up the phone. I go, hey, my grandkids are calling, and I'll say, hey, can't talk right now. I'm in the middle of a meeting, and my daughter's like, Dad, you don't have to pick up, but and I'll show their faces to them before, but yeah, it's different, with the grandkids. Again, it's just the evolution, right? When you're a young man having kids, and again, we talked about it. You're chasing the money and the house and the mortgage and all this stress, and you're not. And it goes back to what I said about my divorce. It forces you to take a step back and to truly appreciate the meaning of life and what's good. So yeah, hey man, I'll always take their call. It's awesome. It's awesome, and it's even better too because I go there all the time when I can and bring donuts and then spoil them. And if they turn into little shits, I can leave. And just leave them with my.
that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. When you end up pursuing the mission or all those measures, the house, the car, the bank account, whatever it may be, I think you end up being a lot more successful than you ever thought you'd be.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah, but at the same time, whether you acquire that, you could have more in the bank than the next guy or the next girl or the bigger house, but it doesn't mean you're happy either, right? And that's another lesson that's learned. You can have all the money and still be a miserable person. So you got to surround yourself, and hopefully, right? Brett Henry, if you ever get married, you need someone that's got your back, that's your partner on multiple levels, right? That you share the same vision and have each other's back, and I do have that, and so that's my biggest cheerleader is my wife, right? My biggest support system. So it's hard to do it without that if you're not aligned there. So um, yeah, all the money in the world, you can be alone, and I guess if that's your level of success, and some people are older than me and they're still chasing it, and they have the fancy house, the fancy cars, but um, I know one thing I do have, at least I feel I'm pretty confident in saying it. I have a ton of friends that I could call any time of the day and or night if I needed something, whether it's bail money. I don't care if it's 100 grand or $1 million. I could call someone and get that right away because they know I would repay them come hell or high water. I would figure it out. And if it's not money, if whatever it is, and that's what it is. I mean, I our weddings, for our kids or family, we have an amazing parties, and it's not because you're at a fancier venue. It's because you surround yourself with some really good people that want the best for each other, and that's what it's all about. And again, it takes some of us longer to figure that out. It doesn't mean that I don't stress out and I'm not stressed about work and still chasing um, things that you have to chase in business and in life, but ultimately, uh, none of it matters if you don't surround yourself with good people that want the best for you. And again, it doesn't have to be money. It's just happiness, and again, time and health. Right, all
Time
the
and
money in the world.
health.
Time
Yeah.
and health. It doesn't change
Yeah.
without
We
big bank.
were, Natalie and I were at a funeral mass about a month ago, and the priest said something was great. It's like, I've talked to some people. Um, they let me know you can't, like, the U-Haul trailer doesn't fit through the pearly gates.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
it just doesn't. So, Gianni, thank you. Well, this is a,
Yeah.
this is a gift to share some time with you and just have you help us just understand the mission and the journey you've been on, and some of the ways that some of the yardsticks and measures that have been put in place, or that you put in place, or others did along the way, and ultimately what's most important now. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good stuff, Henry. Are we done now? Are we wrapping up?
We're
No,
gonna
we're done. Well, one more thing. Where can people find your company? Is there a website? Do you guys have social media or
We
something?
do
Where can
all,
people
yeah,
find Alta Equipment?
all of the above. Yeah, if you Google Alta Equipment, yeah, you'll find us. And social media, we're all over it. We have a marketing team that, and some of our folks post, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. Yeah, Alta Equipment. We're publicly traded at ALTG. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. We went public in February of 2020, right before the world ended with COVID. Yeah, so it's an interesting first month there, but ultimately, yeah, you can find us. We're in 14 states or so, and then we're in Montreal, Toronto. We're in Canada as well. So 3,000 plus employees. So continuing to grow, and your dad's been a big help, Henry. He's helped us, and every time we have an acquisition or something, we try to instill, his version of we kind of termed it AOS now, but ultimately it's just the structure and meetings and cadence and holding people accountable. So he's been awesome, instrumental in our communication and growth, and I think you've done an amazing job, Henry. So your dad should be proud. I know you kind of said you struggled, and where do you go and what do you do? But the way you've handled yourself, I think, in this interview and obviously preparation, kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. He's all right. I think he's all right. He's all right.
some
Yeah.
days. Yeah,
Some days.
if I'm the one, if I buy more bourbon and fill the fridge up with beer, then I'm a great dad.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah,
There's the measure.
good.